we can call the meeting to order.
Okay, well, welcome to the special meeting of the Planning Commission. This Wednesday, November 8th. We are going to start with a pledge of allegiance led by Vice Chairperson Tori Keene. We have a roll call, please.
Yes, Commissioner Anderson.
Here.
Commissioner Heath.
Here.
Commissioner Schmidt.
Here.
Vice Chairperson Keene.
Here.
Chairperson Vanden Eyck.
Here.
For the record, Carranza and Hughes are both excused absences, so we have 5 present. Thank you.
Can I have a motion to approve the agenda, please?
Motion.
I'll second.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Heath.
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt.
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Keene.
Yes.
Chairperson Vanden Eyck.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Now we'll move into the public comment portion of the meeting, which is reserved for persons wishing to address the Planning Commission on any item that is not on the agenda over which we might have jurisdictions. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to make a public comment? Please state your name and limit your time to 3 minutes. Thank you. Can you check to see and turn on the mic? It might take a second.
Oh, there it is. Max Zappis, local resident. Just wanted to ask the Planning Commission to see if city staff could review the CFD process and how that gets implemented, and see if they could go back to how it was originally created. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else that would like to make a public comment? Now we'll go ahead and close the public comment period. And can I get a motion on the consent calendar, please?
I'll make that motion, please. I'll second it.
Commissioner Schmidt.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Heath.
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Keene.
Yes.
Chairperson Vanden Eyck.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go ahead and move into the public hearing portion of the meeting. For each of the following items, the public will be given an opportunity to speak after the staff report. The chair will open the public hearing and invite the applicant or the applicant's representative to make any comments. Members of the public will be invited to provide testimony to the commission following the applicant. Speakers should state their name for the record and can address the commission for 3 minutes. After all public comments have been received, the public hearing will be closed and the commission will discuss the item and take appropriate actions. Our first item is 9590 El Camino Real, the Arcos signage. Is there any ex parte? We'll start with Commissioner Schmidt.
No ex parte.
No ex parte.
No ex parte.
No ex parte.
And none for me either. So we'll go ahead and turn it over to staff for their presentation.
Okay, good evening to all of the planning commissioners and everyone in the audience. Apologize again, we are a little bit late due to some technical issues, but you know, like you have to leave a steak to sit after you cook it, all the flavors of this presentation had to mingle together, and now we get something beautiful to eat for the night. So, as this title slide says, this is technically actually an administrative use permit hearing. This is for canopy signage at the new Arcos station on El Camino Real next to the County Social Services building. And that is at 9550 or 9590 El Camino Real. We've seen kind of 2 separate addresses here. I believe it's addressed as 9590, the parcel is 9550. But regardless, it is that Arcos station. And the project ID here is use 23-0067. So just a little bit of context here. This is a 1.4 acre lot, which includes an 8 pump gas station, 3,000 square foot convenience store, and 1,400 square foot restaurant space. As you can see in this aerial imagery here, neither our GIS system, Google Maps, Bing Maps, nothing really has an updated aerial quite yet. It's a very new build. And so the best we could get is kind of a dirt lot here, but just imagine a gas station. It is zoned CT or commercial tourism, and nearby parcels are primarily zoned CT or CR. As you can see on the southwestern portion of El Camino Real right there, it is largely CT, commercial tourism. To the northeast there, largely CR or commercial retail. So just a bit of a summary here. So the applicant is proposing 768 square feet of signage and chroma color banding around the gas station canopy, as well as a LED lighting strip. So these current requirements that this project is being compared to are based on 2019 design review committee hearing for the gas station itself, and that was under project ID pre-19-0034. During this hearing, the design review committee recommended the removal of the high chroma banding that we are now discussing today. The proposal is identical to a previous administrative use permit, and that was project ID use 22-0063. However, we are here at Planning Commission rather than at an administrative use permit hearing, essentially because this is an appeal. It is not technically an appeal, but it in a practical sense is. So the applicant missed the 2-week appeal period and is now resubmitting for reconsideration. It was determined by staff and by our community development director that this should be escalated to Planning Commission, considering this is essentially an appeal of that prior administrative use permit hearing denial. So I'll start with just a couple of site photos here. This is the existing condition on the site at that gas station canopy. So as you can see, it's painted in fairly neutral colors. You have that classic California brown orange roofing shingles, but the actual outside perimeter of the canopy structure is in a kind of neutral light tan color. There is that Arco logo on what I believe is the southeastern side of the canopy, as well as, if you look closely on that rightmost picture, the Arco logo with the text on it as well. So the proposal here is essentially to surround this canopy with some color banding that's seen on the top photo here of the presentation slide. And alongside that have essentially an LED strip, a bluish purplish LED strip in the very middle of that color banding. I've included some examples on the bottom of the slide here showing what that looks like in practice. And in addition, there are some elevations on this slide that were submitted, I believe, with the original administrative use permit that shows it in black and white, just showing a little bit more information there on the top of the slide here. And on the bottom, back in color with some dimensional information. And again, that Arco logo and text. So we'll just go through some evaluation with respect to Atascadero Municipal Code. So municipal code does have some limitations on signage and color banding on gas station canopies. Section 9-15.08 establishes a maximum of 20 square feet of signs, logos, or color banding on no more than 2 sides of a pump island canopy structure. And the remainder, it just has to be architecturally consistent with the rest of the site. It's my understanding that is essentially the existing condition of the gas station canopy right now. As you can see from those previous photos, you know, the rest of the canopy structure is architecturally consistent in terms of color and materials with the rest of the site, with the mini mart structure and the restaurant structure there. So the proposed signage exceeds the Atascadero Municipal Code allowance by 748 square feet and would be on all 4 sides of the canopy. I should be clear, we are including all of the color banding in that square footage. It is technically signage under our code, but that doesn't mean, of course, that there is 748 square feet of what in a practical sense could be called signage. It's not necessarily text or logos or anything like that. It is largely the color banding that is being included in that number. Atascadero Municipal Code also requires exterior lighting to be shielded. So section 9-4.137 notes that decorative and non-decorative exterior lighting must be shielded to direct light towards buildings or on the ground, and that light sources must be designed and adjusted to direct light away from roads and nearby properties or buildings. And that's largely to reduce glare and, for example, not have light from one property be shining into the window of an adjacent property. So the proposed LED lighting would be fully exposed as designed and would cause glare that's visible from nearby properties. A condition has been added to the approval resolution to shield the light strip and to redirect light downward. And so if tonight Planning Commission does decide to approve this project, we have included that condition as a condition of approval on the project in order to make sure that that light strip is not causing glare onto adjacent properties. Additionally, Atascadero Municipal Code does allow exceptions to sign standards. So if we look at section 9-15.011, it notes that sign area and other limitations of the sign ordinance may be modified through approval of an AUP. And of course, that's subject to a findings and appearance review. So the modification of standards must be consistent with the purpose of the sign ordinance. And to kind of put that down into 3 bullet points, it's just protecting the economy and aesthetics of the community, implementing quality sign design standards, and minimizing the adverse effect of signs on nearby properties. So the canopy coverage area of this gas station canopy is 4,388 square feet, and it contains 8 pump islands, as I mentioned in a prior slide, and that makes it one of the larger canopies in the city. All of our recent canopy permits and use permits issued for canopy amendments have adhered to maximum signage requirements. There haven't really been any exceptions made in recent years. And so this would be somewhat setting a precedent as to making exceptions for signage requirements on gas station canopies. Now, as it is today, the station is directly adjacent to El Camino Real and is readily identifiable as a gas station and specifically as an ARCO station with the existing signage. At the previous administrative use permit hearing, the hearing officer found that the proposed signage increase was inconsistent with the required findings that need to be made in order to approve an increase like this. There wasn't one specific finding that it was found to go against, but all of the findings that were provided, the administrative hearing officer found that they weren't met by this project. So here are the findings that would need to be met in order to approve this project. The first is that the modification of the applicable standard won't result in a project that's inconsistent with the general plan. That the modification of that standard won't result in a project that is inconsistent with the character of the immediate neighborhood or contrary to its orderly development. And lastly, that it will not result in a project that is not in compliance with any pertinent city policy or pertinent city criteria adopted by ordinance or resolution of council. So lastly, we'll just go over the staff recommendation. The staff is recommending that Planning Commission deny use 23-0067 and uphold the decision of the administrative hearing officer, thereby not allowing signage on the perimeter of the canopy in excess of what was originally approved by the design review committee. There also are some alternative decisions that are available to the commission. The Planning Commission may determine that more information is needed and continue the item, and we can return back at a later date in order to discuss the project. Or the Planning Commission may approve the project. If that is the case, the commission must find all of the findings that are listed in this staff report in the affirmative. And essentially, the way it breaks down for denial or approval here is that for approval, all of those findings need to be found in the affirmative. For denial, just one needs to be found in the negative. So with that, staff is open to any questions that the Planning Commission may have.
Yeah, good evening. Thank you. The one condition that you mentioned that was added, could you go over that condition and explain how that condition is going to achieve its intent?
Sure. Oh, sure.
Could you go to it, please, so we can see it?
Sure. So the condition that was mentioned, if the planning commission approves the project to be consistent with our lighting ordinance, would be to add some level of shielding or to place it in a channel that reflects the light rather than allows you to see the point source of the light. So the current proposal has the lighting strip in sort of a plastic rounded sort of bullnose shape that goes around the center where the light source is directly visible through the plastic shielding or sheeting. And so what we've seen on some other gas station canopies, I believe we did it for the pit stop that has sort of that retro design theme with the really large tilted canopy that has yet to be built but was approved a couple years ago, is that they put it in a channel that was a little bit of a reflectorized material, and then they had sort of an angled coping that actually blocked the physical light strip source, but that did reflect it up to the sort of reflectorized channel. So there was a softer glow and you could not see the lighting directly.
And we're talking about the strip that's on page 20 of our report, right? Correct. There was a photograph that Sam had shown of what this looks like. Can
Yeah,
we
would you
see-
like me to move to that slide?
Yes, please.
Yeah,
right
on the
there.
bottom left here, I believe.
So, I don't know. I'm just wondering out loud. I mean, the coloring, I mean, this really technically isn't a bright light. And I don't know how the Motel 6 near the corner around here, it has basically huge white bright lights that shine everywhere. And yet they have that, and I don't know how they did that, but they did that. Have there been any specific comments by any of the neighbors as to that they're concerned about the lighting and the glare and
We-
the refraction of it?
We haven't received any public comment for this project, no. I will note the approval resolution, because there is a denial and an approval resolution attached here, because it's technically an appeal. Does note that neighboring properties do also have relatively bright lights. It is on El Camino, and so, naturally, there are a lot of businesses that have exterior lighting.
And then I have a question about condition number 1. It refers to a conditional use permit. Is that correct? Or should we be saying an administrative use permit?
It should, yes. If we do approve this project, we can modify that condition in order to
Okay,
have it
thank-
reflect the appropriate meeting.
okay, thank you. Thank you for your help.
Any questions from anybody else? Can you explain how color banding is considered signage?
So our sign ordinance was adopted a number of years ago. And as part of the signage cleanup that the city council kind of directed the city to do, there was a lot of focus on gas station canopy color banding. It was generally very bright. They generally replace the banding and can do sort of without much of a permit because it is sort of a painted on element. And there were a lot of bright colored canopies, our gas stations. Some of them are on El Camino, some of them are on different streets that are adjacent to residential uses. And so at that time, the city council adopted the sign ordinance that did include color banding as part of your allowed signage area.
Okay. And you were talking about shielding for this light. It doesn't seem like it's a glaring light. So can the lumens be adjusted so that it's just an accent and just highlights the band, or is that still considered a nuisance?
So if planning commission were leaning towards that direction, I would recommend that you would continue the item for more information. I don't know what lumens it's at. I don't know what would be considered glaring and what wouldn't be at this time. So we would need to come back with some additional information on that.
Any other questions? Staff, is the applicant or the applicant's representative here? Would you like to address this? Can you check the mic or speak directly into the mic? Is that on?
speak into it.
Oh, it looks like it's on. Or. Wait a second. If you, okay, go ahead and turn.
My name's Dave Bartle. I represent Track. We do the signage for the Arco station for the owner. I brought along a few little things for you guys to see what we're asking for here. Can I bring some things to you guys and just kind of hand some things out and let you see a
Sure.
few items?
Dave, I'm gonna have to, because we're recording the meeting, everything you say has to be into the microphone. So if you want to, yeah, or you can pass around, and the commission can pass it around, but thank you.
Well, I'll pass it around. But I just real quick, I just want to show you how bright we are.
So is the color banding an actual decal that's applied? Is this?
Dave, I'm so sorry. We're gonna have to, yeah, get on
trying to
record. Thanks.
That's the decal that goes on the ACM that sits on the canopy. So I didn't realize that you guys had it in and out, just an off ramp down below. And I noticed they're red light bar around the building and stuff like that. Same kind of thing for the Arco station. Getting off the freeway at Santa Rosa, you cannot see that station. You don't know the station's even there. So I took some pictures here. I just want to kind of walk by and show you, let you know what I'm doing.
Great. Hey, Greg, why don't you?
Annette would be willing to hold that over there for them, or that might be detachable.
How about this?
Oh, let's try that.
Perfect.
So basically, I'm showing coming off the freeway. If I'm from out of town and I had no idea that station's down there. It just looks like office buildings. You have no idea that's a gas station down there. I almost thought I was at I got off at the wrong off ramp. So. It's your daytime. That's what it looked like at night, but. There's. No, I didn't get any, because you couldn't see the canopy at all. There's the canopy. It looks like part of the building right there. So it just blends in. I had no idea the gas station was down there. So right there. And when you get off the off ramp on, I think it's Front Street. And I was going down, didn't realize the station was right there. That's why with the branding of the blue decal and the light bar, people getting off at night would be able to see. They know, hey, there's a blue banding Arco. It just kind of looks like part of the building. I didn't realize it was an actual gas station. If you're on El Camino Real, then you know it's a gas station, but getting off the freeway looking to get gas, it's a different story. You guys want to see it? So just come across Front Street here, and I had to look down and I wasn't sure what it was. I just thought it was office buildings. I didn't realize that was the canopy. And then here's coming from Santa Rosa. And Sure. And those are all within the city right there. Sure. I'll take a picture. For the camera. Did you guys want to see the light bar at all, or?
No, that, we can see it from here and that's the brightness that you're suggesting. Is that all your presentation? Yeah, okay, thank you. All right. Is anybody else from the public that would like to speak on this subject? Mr. Zappis?
Max again, City of Atascadero resident. Just looking at it, I think it seems fine to allow the light in the bar. That's all my input. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else from the public that'd like to speak on this subject? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the public comment portion of the meeting and bring it back to the Planning Commission for discussion
I have a question.
of staff. Go ahead.
Is that on?
No.
Hello? Okay. We have another Arco station. He gave us a picture. Have we ever, and that one's in the middle of residential. It's off of Monterey, right? By Monterey? San Anselmo, Monterey? Is that right? Okay. Have we ever had any complaints about that color light banding? That we know of?
I'm just trying to look to see if they have the light band. I don't believe that they do, but I would need to check. They might have the color banding, but the light is
Oh,
a
but not the
new
light.
element.
And so
Okay.
it's not so much that we have gotten complaints or expect to get complaints about it. It's just generally, what kind of image of quality that the city wants to portray in terms of the amount of signage, in terms of how these buildings look. And it also kind of speaks to sort of what's happening now. People generally don't use signage to find places. They use a lot of different methods. It's usually your phone, it's usually your apps, it's usually everything else. So they're not as important. So that's kind of the thinking of when we created the sign ordinance and created those standards of what those boundaries are. But there is a process to ask for these exceptions, and they're going through this process now. And I think this is a good one for the commission to deliberate on. And I think it's not going to be a deal killer either way.
Yeah.
I think as far as staff's concerned.
And it's surrounded by other commercial things with bright lights.
There is
So-
some residential directly across the street from this particular site, believe it or not.
Right behind the pet hospital.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in that area, there's that, and then there is a larger vacant lot that's going to develop with some multifamily residential. But yeah, it's not the most intrusive. I mean, the lights underneath the canopy are far more intense than anything this light band would do.
And so could we approve the vinyl sticker thing and not the lights?
There's all kinds of options.
Okay. Because part of the findings are to support the economy of something. And it seems like not allowing them to have the same or similar color banding as to almost every other gas station in town seems like an unfair economic, not punishment, but do you know what I'm saying?
Well,
I don't feel like
I mean, it's not quite the case. I mean, the other gas stations could also go through a process to ask for more signage, and they would have to come up through.
Well,
you
but
know.
I'm saying based on the photos of the other, and just thinking about gas stations when I pass by, they have like 7-Eleven has the stripes and Shell has the yellow thingy. And so it's sort of unconscious. Oh, that's a gas station. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud. Anyone else wants to talk?
Dennis?
Yes, Exhibit B, did you discuss this? Did I miss this? Yes. It's red highlights around the building, so that's what we're saying. That's where the logo is going to be located. Looks like C3 designation.
Yes, so that was a site plan from a previous submission. I believe those callouts don't have any relevance as to this current submission. Besides that, actually, this was the site plan, I believe, that was submitted to DRC. And so the callouts here are for the DRC approved signage, at least as far as I understand it. But they don't include any callouts for example, the lighting bar or anything like that. That's just around the entire perimeter of the station.
There's been a lot of discussion about the sign ordinance and the things that have, if it's an older ordinance that we have, if we were to be working on a new sign ordinance, would we have more specifics that deal with this issue that we're talking about tonight, do you think?
We haven't received any direction to update the sign ordinance again. I believe the last time we did it was 2015 or 17, somewhere around there. And these were the new standards that were adopted. We haven't received any direction, so we would not know how we would update that or what any specifics would be if it was requested from council.
But admittedly, it's not addressed specifically in that ordinance because
The color banding
the lighting.
for gas station canopies, not specifically, and color banding, we get requests for on many buildings, not just gas station canopies.
Okay. I'm just wondering, it seems like some of this is being left open to an interpretation that's the direction by city council has provided. And is that the current city council that provided that direction, or is it?
Yes, our last sign ordinance, I believe most of the council that sits today was sitting during that adoption. And I think our lighting ordinance is different than our sign ordinance. So we're pulling from two separate ordinances. When lighting's involved, we look at our lighting ordinance and not the sign ordinance.
But the concept of including the lighting in the square footage for the signage.
I don't think we're including the lighting. The lighting is part of the color banding. So we're just using the color banding for the,
I'm sorry, that's
yeah.
what I meant. Color banding is considered signage.
yes, that is in our sign ordinance.
And then, as you identified, the only real residential area that I know of this area is that area behind the veterinary hospital. In that area, again, I agree with some of the comments that have been made. This doesn't seem to be that obtrusive as it appears here in the photographs that we have. And as the planning director stated, the underlining on the canopy is much, much brighter than the banding light on the sides. And again, I'll bring up the Motel 6 and the numerous lights that they have on top of the building there that shine in every direction. Thank you.
I have a question and a comment. The banding allowance now is how much, and compared to it's 748 extra square feet that they're requesting?
So as I understand it right now, we have a, let me go back here. I believe it is a 20 feet of, 20 square feet, I'm sorry, of signs, logos, and or color banding on no more than two sides of a Pump Island canopy structure.
Okay. And the question I had about the lighting, and I'm not so concerned about the color banding because that's neutral. You kind of, I'm worried more about, light pollution at night. From someone who lives right across the street from a gas station, it's a big difference between seeing a flashlight in a field pointed down and seeing a flashlight pointed at your house. Big, big difference. So, the fact that these lights would be exposed horizontally versus, I mean, you can have way, way bright lights pointed down, but they don't wash out across fields. You'd have to look in that direction. You can see them, but they're not washing out from the perceived eye. It almost is a background light. So I would be kind of leaning towards not worrying about so much about the color banding. You know, that's kind of a daytime notification of, you know, people looking for something that stands out. But the nighttime light, I'm kind of concerned about that being kind of distracting to people living in the area, especially up on that hill, you know, in the back roads. You know, you can see that from pretty far away.
Greg, did you have any comments?
The comment I have, I'm just noticing, looking at the blue light over there on display, you can see the blue cast behind it on the pedestal that it's on. And that looks like it has black behind it and it's still casting blue. So it seems like you will end up with light pollution.
I don't know how I feel about the actual light, but I think that the banding, I don't have a problem with the banding. It seems more of a kind of branding for the gas station. I mean, when I think of an Arco, they have that blue band, and I know exactly what I'm looking at when I see that, even on the freeway from a distance. I don't know that you can actually see it from the freeway, but you can certainly see it from El Camino. So that's my thought on it.
Would it be possible to turn the lights off?
We actually were discussing that just a moment ago.
I mean, obviously it's not going to be the same because there's a bunch of other lights around this
There would be a
one,
lot of
but
street
it would
lights and stuff.
be interesting to see it if we could possibly.
For safety, let's all not get up when the lights are off.
Or maybe just turn off these main lights and leave sort of the under archway lights on, just so that we can kind of see how it's reflected or how it compares. First ever planning commission in the dark.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I was looking at that blue light over there and I was thinking that's brighter than that right there, but the LED, little LED.
Just to make a note, if that little blue LED on there, you can see from this far away, if it was pointed downward or shielded,
Yeah,
it
you
would
see it.
cast an illumination, but
Right.
not quite as bright. So,
Yeah.
if it was to be approved, I would definitely request some sort
Some
of shielding,
Shielding.
you know, because it would be much more subtle.
Mhm. What are if we were to approve the lighting, what are all the findings we'd have to make?
So that would be what's on this page here. That modification of the applicable standard won't result in a project that's inconsistent with the general plan, inconsistent with the character of the immediate neighborhood, or contrary to its orderly development, or not in compliance with pertinent city policy or criteria adopted by ordinance or resolution of the council. In the staff report, under both the approval and denial resolutions, there are findings on either end that are added onto that those resolutions.
On page 15 are findings and facts about each of the findings that are made for approval. And on page 15 and 16.
That's correct. Yeah, 15 are the findings for approval, and then findings for denial are page 12. I should note that the findings for denial, because we are taking this from a prior AUP hearing. The findings for denial are verbatim from the original staff report that was prepared by prior Assistant Planner Bailey Sullivan.
Your statement about the denial by the administrative officer was that the findings to support the project were not in the document, or there were no findings that were available at that time to support the approval? It seemed like that was a just that I thought.
I
there-
think that the statement that was made was that there was not one finding that was singled out, that the hearing officer found that they could not make any of the required findings.
That's correct.
All right, thank you.
I'm sorry, you said they were verbatim from the officer?
The findings for denial here on page 12,
Mhm.
they were verbatim from the original administrative use permit. They weren't written by the hearing officers. They were written by the prior assistant planner
Okay.
here in staff, but they were the findings that were made by the hearing officer to deny the original administrative use permit.
I'm just curious because I see that it says the proposed amount of signage is not an appropriate expression of the desired appearance for the gateways of Atascadero. This is in the middle of El Camino, so I'm confused as to how this is a gateway. I just would like to appreciate that finding if I'm missing something.
Yeah, I understand. So as I mentioned, this wasn't written by any current member of staff. It was taken verbatim from a prior member, but I would imagine that the intention of saying that was essentially a gateway to, I suppose, the denser, more commercial portions of El Camino Real. You know, if you get a little bit further south than that, you get a little bit more into I guess more residential areas, not necessarily as commercial.
But in our general plan now, it seems like perhaps, or maybe it's not the general plan, but it seems like we have more clearly defined the gateways to Atascadero as being the Santa Barbara, El Camino area and the Del Rio area as kind of our gateways now. Am I just making that up? It seems like that's the areas we have referred to as the gateways in prior meetings.
Yeah, there are definitely some identified gateways in the general plan. I think, as Sam said, they were left in verbatim because those were what was included in the record for the previous use permit. If you were to recommend denial and adoption of that resolution, you could change any finding or fact to be more specific to your discussions and the information that you have before you tonight.
Okay.
Please. In the very beginning of the discussion, it was noted that if the commission is interested in approving the request, that the item be continued for what purpose?
So I think it was mentioned that the commission might want information related to the lumens and some information about the lighting strip compared to other lighting nearby and other forms of lighting. So if that were the case and was predicated, your approval was predicated on that, then we would recommend continuing for more information. But if you do not need that information to make a decision, you can make a decision this evening.
Okay, thank you. With what's being said, I'd like to make a motion, please. See how my fellow commissioners feel about that. And my motion is to recommend approval of Resolution B, which is the resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of Atascadero, California, approving an administrative use permit, use 230067, to increase signage at 9590 El Camino Real, APN 056-071-011, parenthetically ABM Enterprises Incorporated, based on the findings that are written in the report on page 15 that addresses that has facts based on for each finding that needs to be made. And I am not including the recommendation of the condition to, I'm sorry, of staff to recess or modify the lighting in the way that's suggested in that condition. Can't quite understand it.
So just to be clear, you are making a motion to, for the approval resolution, but, with the exception of that condition to shield or redirect the light. Is that correct? Okay.
I will second that motion.
Does that include changing in the conditions CUP to AUP?
Yes,
Commissioner Schmidt,
yes,
Vice Chairperson Keen,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson,
No,
Commissioner Heath,
No.
Chairperson Vanden Eyck.
No.
Motion fails.
The only thing that got me on that, if we can have just a discussion, was no shielding of the light. Actually, if we could do it with no light at all, I think, I could approve that, no problem, but, I'll make a motion that we approve. What is that? Draft resolution B as outlined. And allow the increased banding. However, I would like to remove the light band in its entirety from this. And we'll change it to, was it an AUP?
And I just wanted to clarify for the record that then that would be modifications to condition number 1 to remove the LED lighting strip as part of the approval. And then modifications to condition number 6 to remove the lighting as allowed and clearly specify that the lighting per the exhibits is not permitted as part of this approval.
That is correct.
I'll second that.
Okay. Chairperson Vanden Eyck,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson,
Yes,
Commissioner Heath,
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
no,
Vice Chairperson Keen,
Yes.
motion passes 4-0.
4-1.
I mean, sorry, 4-1.
I've disappeared.
Do we have to have? I guess that's still a majority of the planning commission.
It is, it's a majority of the full planning commission. So if it was a 3-2 vote again, it would have failed again, but 4 gives us an affirmative
Mhm.
action.
And if the applicant wanted to appeal this to the city council to allow the light ban, they could do that, right?
Yes, within 14 days of today.
Thank you very much. Okay. Our next item that we have is our objective design standards. So we're gonna turn that over to our community development director for that.
Yes, and then I'm going to turn it over to our planning manager, Kelly Gleason, to present objective design standards. But first of all, I'm going to pick on one of you, like I mentioned before, to outline a clear definition of objective versus subjective, Commissioner Schmidt. So that's what this discussion is really about. It's about objective versus subjective, but Kelly's going to give you a lot more detail than that. It's actually quite interesting. This is really it's really a streamlining of permitting and design review so that we can actually entitle projects without having to go through a discretionary process like this. Anyway, I'll leave you to it, Commissioner Smith.
Well,
before
I
we
think
release
that
Kelly.
you've kind of summarized it yourself. I would say if there are subjective requirements or conditions, they're discretionary. Whereas I would say that objective conditions are not discretionary. And I would say we're not choosing to use them the way that we might individually feel. And then I would imagine that the objective conditions that we're talking about are within categories. And so there might be a category that might have 4 objective conditions within it that you can pick from to apply to your project.
Perfect.
Thank you. And I think we can have more commissioner comment when we get to that section. But right now we've kind of prepared a presentation to go through sort of an introduction to our objective design standards. We've been working on this project for quite some time. It is a grant funded project that we received some grant funding to complete with our consultants MIG. And so we've developed some draft standards that we're introducing you to this evening so that you can have time to ponder over them and think about them. And then we will be bringing a draft back as in ordinance form for recommendation to the city council with any suggested changes that you might have this evening incorporated. So a little bit of background, there's recently been some state laws that were adopted that apply to certain housing projects, not all of them, but certain ones. Some of those require application of only objective standards to specific housing developments. A lot of those housing developments either include affordable housing or have some other criteria that are met. So as I mentioned, the city did receive grant funding to develop objective design standards for Atascadero. Even though only certain projects through state law are subject to the application of objective design standards from cities, we are writing design standards in the city of Atascadero to apply to all housing projects. And we are looking to make more housing projects ministerial rather than discretionary so that there is some certainty in application of design standards to allow housing projects to move forward in a more streamlined way. So the city council did review these some key concepts that were developed by MIG through discussions with the council and the public, and they did provide some direction in July of 2022, which seems really far away right now. We also took these draft standards to the design review committee for comment and made a couple modifications based on their input. So a little bit of background on objective design standards. Again, these are objective standards. So we can't have some shoulds. We can't make it consistent with something over here. We have to be very clear about what we are looking for. So numerical values, material changes and how many materials or colors you can do on a building, very specific roof forms, very specific setbacks. So they look really long. I know you've got them in your staff report, but this is kind of the way that the state is going to provide some certainty to developers and applicants, property owners, and the city of what can be built to streamline housing development. And we also get a chance doing this to impress some local influence. So what are the design considerations for Atascadero? What helps buildings blend into Atascadero's not only architectural character, but land use transition areas and what that feels like next to some of our single family zones when we have multifamily zones next door or mixed use developments that might be next door to residential developments. So we were able to build some of that into our objective standards. So as I mentioned before, we are applying objective design standards to all multifamily and mixed use developments with 2 or more units. So basically anything that's zoned multifamily that develops with something other than just a single family residence would have to meet these standards. It's okay if people can't meet these standards or they want to propose something different. They would just go through a discretionary conditional use permit process and be reviewed that way. So again, this is creating a streamlined ministerial box for most housing projects, but definitely allows for flexibility if a design standard can't be met, if there's a very unique site condition that needs to be addressed, or if somebody wants to propose a very unique design that is sort of outside the box that we've created with objective standards. One of the things that these standards do, which was required by the state through adoption of our housing element, is to increase the number of project sizes of housing units that can be developed without a conditional use permit. So we're currently proposing that go to 40 units. So there still would be some housing developments, regardless of whether they met objective design standards or not, that would be required to go through use permit review. And these are generally projects that are larger and may have greater impacts on the neighborhood or surrounding uses. Again, if they qualified as affordable housing or under certain state laws, the city would not necessarily be able to say no or reduce density or add requirements that would make the project infeasible to build. But there is a certain amount of subjective design consideration that could be applied to projects through that discretionary process. So our current limit is set at 12, and the current proposal is to increase that number to 40. The objective design standards would require amendments to both Title IX, which is our planning and zoning title of our municipal code, and Title 11, which deals with subdivisions. So if you've reviewed the packet, there are some standards for cottage cluster development, and we are providing an allowance for those to be subdivided and provide small lot residential subdivision to increase some ownership opportunities within the city. So there's a couple topic areas that were identified for objective design standards that we have grouped into categories along with our consultant to provide specific design direction on. So the first are just the overall multifamily and mixed use building design standards. Second would be the cottage cluster, like I mentioned with the last slide. And then we also have added some sections to our municipal code about unit size and fractional density. And we'll go through that concept in a minute. And then we also have the section of our code that deals with site design and property development standards. So anything on the ground that is outside of that building envelope. So in terms of multifamily and mixed use building design, with our consultants, we worked on developing a menu structure. Atascadero is a very eclectic place, and we hear time and time again that we want to make sure that Atascadero stays eclectic in its design and flexible in terms of people's ideas for development on their properties. So with this menu structure, we've broken it down into sort of 4 key element areas. Required components that are just general design considerations that are required for all buildings. Some attention to wall plane variation to ensure that larger buildings are broken up in a manner that helps create and maintain a pedestrian scale for these projects. Fenestration and materials, so how we treat the facade with windows, different colors or different material choices, and then how we deal with roofs. Each of these tiers contains a number of design elements that people can choose from, and there's a different amount that you choose based on the size of building that you are proposing. So this is a little bit of the breakdown of how that would look in terms of a menu. So our consultant has created some categories for types and styles of buildings, larger buildings such as mixed use buildings. We've broken that into a couple different categories based on the width of the building to ensure that we maintain some flexibility and don't over analyze the standards and apply them for buildings that are narrower in width. We also have the multiplex, which is 5 or more units within one building. And again, different standards for longer buildings rather than more narrow buildings. And then we have the duplex, triplex, fourplex, and cottage cluster, which would be a smaller scale units. And you can see those have less standards that they are required to meet. So in terms of tier 1, these are required components. So in our menu of options, we relate to things such as minimum floor height of ground floor commercial uses when you're in a mixed use building to ensure commercial and economic viability of the ground floor commercial spaces in those types of buildings. We have standards related to minimum transparency, so ensuring that we have windows and sort of proper facade detailing to create good aesthetics. Window insets, small details that make big differences on buildings that can be done to every building to ensure that we get some shade and shadow that provides some good visual cues. Maximum length of blank walls and then corner treatments where buildings are located on the corner of two streets. So these are kind of elements that all buildings need to incorporate, kind of the baseline. In terms of tier 2, we have design strategies related to a wall plane variation, the facade of a building. I don't think that that should be changed. Sam, sorry, give us 1 sec. I want to make sure we're still recording. We're not going to have a very good record if the webcam needs to hear us. Studio 24C. Oh, okay. Seems like it's working. So these strategies include incorporating a plaza or a forecourt, so some sort of setback within your building plane that provides some variation that might provide for places for people to gather and outdoor use spaces. Upper story step backs so that there is some variation along the upper floor of buildings. It could be just the inclusion of balconies along a facade that create that shade and shadow and undulation within the facade itself. It could be another sort of general massing break within the design of a building. Somebody could bring a whole section of the building forward or backward to create that massing break. And in Atascadero, we hear a lot of importance about the brick facade and maintaining sort of that colony architecture connection, even if it's not in the same architectural style. And so we did provide some allowances and credit for people that wanted to do a full brick facade building to fit in with sort of that Atascadero identity feature. This menu also includes vertical elements on horizontal buildings to ensure that all of our facade breaks are not horizontal on a very horizontal building and that we're not accentuating that feature, but we are breaking it up appropriately for scale. It also allows for projections into the front setback. So we want to maintain a front setback. We want to have street trees along a lot of our commercial areas. We don't provide street trees within parkways or along our streets in a majority of Atascadero, excepting downtown. And so we do want to establish a setback that allows for those street trees and that canopy and a greater experience for pedestrians along our sidewalk. But we also want to encourage buildings to be able to use that area for projection to maximize the use of the project site. Again, corner treatments and maximum length of blank walls. So if you do have a corner building and you need to do corner treatments, that can count as a feature. Even though it's a required feature, it doesn't mean that you need to choose something different. We're allowing that to count if you did that as part of your required elements. So tier 3 focuses on fenestration and materials. So we have things that are kind of additional to a facade, awnings. There's a credit if you increase the area of transparency beyond the baseline level to add more windows and more variation along the facade. The use of window trim, higher quality window materials, lintels, windowsills. So these are kind of tinier details around some of those typical facade detailings and features. Decorative facade trim, some cornices, some secondary cladding material. So we're starting to get into materials and things that we apply to a facade to enhance some of the features as part of the design. Our last tier are roofs. There's a lot of variation that you can do with roofs that create shade and shadow. There's also benefit to some flat roofs and roofs with parapets, especially when we think of a downtown type streetscape. So we wanted to make sure that we allow for both so that we're not taking away a design consideration within any portion of the city. So some of the things we can do with roofs are have exaggerated eaves if we do have a non-flat roof, or even if we have a flat sail type roof. Decorative rafter tails, a projecting cornice, so that would be applied to some of our flat roofs and roofs with parapets in the similar to what we see in downtown area. Some roof profile variation, so differences in height of roof or slope of roof. And then roof type combination. So maybe we have mostly a flat roof with a parapet, but we also have a shed roof over a corner feature or a tower element at the corner. And then the inclusion of dormers, which is probably most applicable to a residential style design. And then what we've done is we've added some additional standards for what happens within those features. So some definition to ensure that people know when they need to add an entry feature, what does that exactly mean? If they add a porch, what does that mean? What are the standards for porches? What does it mean to add an awning? What does it mean to have a balcony? Is a Juliet balcony count, or does that not count? So we've added some standards and definitions for some of those features that are referred to in our menus of options. And then in particular, we also looked at building height. So we've heard from council and the community that the height in downtown really needs to be increased to create a greater sense of place and have some additional opportunity for more larger scale mixed use developments. So part of this objective design standard update is to increase the height in our downtown core to 55 feet. With some allowances as well for roof projections if somebody wants to do a non-flat roof. We will not be increasing height in other areas of the city until the general plan update, if anything comes out of that. One of the council's key directions was also to look at transitions between our multifamily and mixed use zones and potential adjacent single family zoning designations. So our single family lots tend to be slightly more rural in nature. And when they are placed next to multifamily or mixed use commercial zoning designations, there can be some incompatibility in terms of building design and massing. So we do have a section related to transitions to rural single family zones that would require some additional step backs of the upper floors of buildings or require a greater setback for the entirety of the building, ensuring that there is some landscape space area as well as additional setback to the upper floors. The standards also talk a little bit about balcony orientation to make sure that on a mixed use building, we don't put all the balconies right up against the backyard of adjacent single family properties to the greatest extent possible. And again, that landscape buffer to ensure that there's enough area for some taller or more dense shrubs and trees to grow. So one of the concepts that we've worked hard on with our consulting team is the cottage cluster development style. So we have a lot of interest and there's been a lot of intrigue about our microhome development on the north end of town, regardless of implementation. I think the site design was very well received for that project. And so we wanted to give people the opportunity to move forward with similar type developments where they are individual cottages or duplex units oriented around common open space areas with minimal private yard space and sort of reduced attention to vehicle and access spaces. And so we developed standards for a cottage cluster development. So if you are doing single family or duplex units, a majority on a multifamily site, there are certain standards for how those units are oriented, how much common open space area is available, what kind of fencing you can do within those standards. And then if you meet those standards, we would then allow subdivision of those styles of development. So currently our minimum lot size in the multifamily zone is 1/2 acre. And if you met these cottage clustered standards, you would be able to do sort of a postage stamp development. So the footprint plus 3 feet or whatever building code would require based on the design of the subdivision. Part of those standards do also include a maximum footprint area in order to maximize open spaces and ensure that there is balance between the usable private unit areas and what space is taken up with buildings, and then the common open space amenity areas to ensure that there's some quality spaces to enjoy as part of those developments. Fractional density was also a big topic at the city council. And so fractional density basically uses unit size to determine the allowed number of units. So right now our density is solely based on the number of units. So 10 units per acre would mean 10 400 square foot units on an acre, or it would mean 10 2,100 square foot units on an acre. And we don't differentiate between what that might look like in terms of the area that gets developed. It is simply how many units you can do on a property. So the use of fractional density allows us to count smaller units as less of a density unit. So you can see in the current proposal, units up to 600 square feet would only count as 1/2 a unit. So you could do 2 600 square foot units where previously it just counted as 1 unit. And this allows a greater number of units to be developed on a site under our current density standards. It encourages smaller units, it encourages affordability by design, and it encourages maximizing the footprint area that you can build within to maximize the number of units that you can achieve. Under our fractional density section, the way that we currently have it written is that fractional density would only apply to the high density residential zone. There's a couple pros and cons to applying it to our medium density residential zone. We will also probably have more residential multifamily zoning districts coming out of our general plan. And so we are seeking some direction from the commission at this time on whether it's appropriate to apply fractional density to our medium density residential zone. Our medium density residential zone is generally that transition zone between single family and multifamily. And so there's a certain level of analysis on whether, it's appropriate to have more units. They're not necessarily taking up more space. They still have to fit within the same developable box area, the same height. They still have to meet parking requirements. But is there a disadvantage to having more smaller units in those transition areas? Or is there not? And so we're seeking Planning Commission's direction on that this evening. As part of fractional density, we also have a maximum average unit size applied to the downtown area. This was the direction given by council to apply it only to downtown to encourage smaller units in the downtown core. So fractional density would also apply as an incentive, but they looked at capping the maximum average unit size to 1,200 square feet in downtown mixed use development. So that doesn't mean that any unit can't be larger than 1,200 square feet. It just means that if a unit is larger than 1,200 square feet, there needs to be another unit in the development that balances it out to the average of 1,200 square feet. Property development standards. I feel like I'm talking at you guys a lot.
Maybe it's time for just a pause and a stretch. Kind of raise your arms up a little bit. There is a lot here. We've been working on this for years, and that's kind of why we're bringing you a piece of it right now. We're kind of introing you the whole thing. When Kelly's done talking about it, you don't worry, you'll have plenty of time for questions, but there's a lot here. So if I were you, I would be totally perplexed. You'd be kind of like, what is all this stuff? We're going to kind of go back. She's going to rip through the whole thing, and then we're going to kind of go back and forth through some of these themes. So there's some big ones here, like fractional density is huge. All these things are big. We were going to come through and make a recommendation to you tonight to make all these changes to the zoning. But I thought, you know what? We stepped back and said, we got to bring this as an intro, warm up to it. Council's seen this a couple times. We've been batting this around for a year or two, but now's your chance to kind of just look at the general picture where this is going. And then we're going to come back to you with an ordinance. But not to interrupt Kelly, but I just wanted to give you a second just to breathe. And
can we take a 5-minute recess?
There you go, Chair.
Yes.
Thank you. Let's take a 5-minute recess.
Perfect.
No questions right now. Well, I've been taking up the program. I can't, I have to wait for, I can't ride my bike anymore.
Well, the mornings are better because now I get up at 6:30 and I go out to the chickens. It's not dark, it's great. But like,
Now it's.
I mean, it's bedtime in like an hour.
We've noticed that our dogs, we should feed them at a certain time, and now that it's darker, they think it's that time.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Last
it's not.
night, last night I was trying to do my workout. I had a dog falling all over me. He's like, it's dinner time. I was like, it's not. Go eat the clock. Go away.
Oh. Then you start thinking about things and then,
The thing is, I would be happy with it either way. I just don't like the change. Just pick one and stick with it. Yeah. So we have silver pen now? Okay. Yeah, the whole, like, I love the argument about the like, the farm. Like, gone. They don't go gone. Yeah, yeah. Oh, right, it's just summer.
But it's summer there and it's winter
Right,
here.
so we just got out for summer break.
So think of it that way, though. Would you like to have their summer here? Or would you like to have our summer versus their summer? Because their summers are winter right now. In terms of daylight.
Yes.
So they have less daylight
Like I
during the
said,
summertime.
I don't actually care. I don't care
No,
which
you don't-
one
you don't have
they
less
pick.
daylight.
I just want it to stop. Ever since I had kids. it's just-
I made the mistake that I hate that people mistake when they talk about it, that there's more sunlight. No, there's not more
No,
sunlight.
it's
It's
not.
the same amount.
It's the same amount.
It doesn't change. It's just how much of it you use.
There you go.
I remember
Oh,
being
yeah.
in Sweden and think about, and they have a high incident of alcohol abuse. And one of the reasons why is it's in the winter time, it's dark.
When's the similar
Yes,
difference?
dark.
I think a few years ago, I wanna say it was like 2018. It was so weird, like summer. None of us had regular the entire time. We would like get up and watch. It was crazy. It was crazy. I like that factory. Good. I would like to see, I mean, I know she said it was. I don't want to see it there.
In between the medium and high density. I was unfortunately, what's the difference? I mean, I would say that I don't know, we have no idea.
Okay, we'll go ahead and bring the meeting back to order. Kelly, if you want to continue.
I absolutely want to continue. This is so much fun. So the next segment that we included within our objective design standards, and these are the amendments to sort of our existing portions of Title IX. We already have standards related to setbacks and landscaping, but they're older and they're outdated. So this would be an overhaul of those sections to update them to sort of current industry standards and to focus on some of the key elements that council gave us direction on. So in particular, the council said, you know what, I don't know if we need as much open space as is in our code today, which is 300 square feet per unit. But we'd like to make sure that open space is quality. So what we did with our consultants is we reduced the open space requirement per unit, but we added again a menu of options to really ensure that those open space areas provided some quality amenities. And you can see we also broke this down by project size. So the smaller the project you have, the less amenities and open space you need to provide. A lot of times in smaller project, there is actually private yard space still proposed as part of those developments. And that generally provides quality yard space for the people living there. And so really, as we get larger in project scale and it becomes more common open space area, we really focused our amenities and quality on those specific types of projects. So in tier 1, we have things like a shared courtyard. So this could be a simple area of pavement or of ground cover that would allow for seating or some sort of gathering space. A shaded patio or amenity space. So a lot of our standards are very focused on providing shade because of Atascadero's hot summers, whether that be a tree or a shade structure. We also have the allowance for public art. So if somebody wants to incorporate some public art into their project, that would be a quality sort of shared amenity as well. And then the preservation of existing on-site mature trees to allow for those sites that do have mature trees and mature shade canopies to have some flexibility around their design and not have to necessarily overdevelop amenity spaces. In terms of tier 2, we have things like outdoor seating. So these are things that sort of add to the amenity level of those spaces. Dog runs, children's play areas, sports courts, which would probably be more on a larger scale project. We would see that. Pools or spas, an outdoor kitchen. And we provide definitions for what an outdoor kitchen is. It's not necessarily a hibachi barbecue on the ground in the middle of some pavement. It would have some amenities with it that help support that as an outdoor kitchen. A fire pit, which is very popular today within amenity spaces. And again, the preservation of native trees. So not just focusing on any mature trees, but specifically native trees in this tier. And then we wanted to ensure that we had an allowance for smaller projects to be able to use their shared driveway area as a shared amenity space. Some of our lots are very narrow, and in order to meet density and meet parking requirements, we see a lot of configurations where there's a shared driveway down the middle of a project site and then parking off to the side of that. And so for smaller projects that don't have the space to be flexible with other outdoor amenity areas, we added in a parking court allowance, provided that that driveway space had certain design features like pavers or stamped and colored concrete, and that the parking could be accommodated off of that area so that it could be used as a neighborhood gathering space. So in terms of tier 3, this focuses a little bit more on softscape elements. So we have vertical landscaping elements, which might be a green wall or some vines as an accent to certain areas. A community garden with some storage requirements and standards for gardening equipment. It might be the inclusion of flowering or edible plants and herbs, or it might be all drought tolerant landscaping. There might also be projects that could include interpretive or educational material. And then some projects are large enough to allow for a nature trail. So in our Las Lomas development on the south end of town, we were able to incorporate a nature trail in that development that's very successful. Part of our updates to our property development standards are also modifications to our setbacks. So we talked a little bit about the transition zone areas, and that's within a certain section of our objective design standards. But when we went through and we looked at our setback standards, we noticed there were a few outdated sections or sections that needed to be updated to allow for some additional landscaping or additional areas that could be used for buildings on the site. So currently in our downtown commercial zone, our front setback is actually 0 feet. It's actually required to be 0 feet. You cannot go any more than 0 feet from the sidewalk unless you are designing it specifically as a public use seating restaurant kind of space area. So in downtown, we want those buildings pressed up against the sidewalk, and we do street trees in the sidewalk in our downtown area. So there's no real changes proposed to the downtown area. The sites are technically allow for 100% coverage if you can meet all of the other standards associated with developing at that rate. In terms of other commercial areas, our existing front setback is 0 feet. I think there was a thought at some point in time that every commercial area could be like downtown and everything would just be up against the street. In downtown, that works great. We have street trees in our sidewalks, and we're able to get that pedestrian atmosphere and shade using those style of street trees. But outside of our downtown, we don't have staff resources, and our sidewalks are not wide enough to allow for street tree plantings in the sidewalks. And so the only place that we can effectively get street trees and any sort of landscaping is within a front setback area. So this is sort of one of the changes that's a little bit different than other changes with objective design standards, in that we are increasing our front setback in our commercial zones to allow for that landscape area, which is not necessarily building design, but including street trees provides a lot of layering and shade and shadow and movement in front of buildings that does a lot to improve the pedestrian experience and aesthetics of a design. And so that would be 15 feet along El Camino Real and 12 feet along all other streets. And El Camino Real is a little bit bigger of a setback. It's about 8 feet of pavement, not including the sidewalks. And so we do want to make sure that we can get some larger scale canopy trees in that area to support sort of the greening and pedestrian elements of El Camino Real. In terms of the multifamily zone, we currently just have a 15-foot front setback. We're looking to maintain that front setback along El Camino Real in our residential areas, but we are looking to reduce that setback in other multifamily areas. So this allows us to still have landscaping in the front setback, but we don't necessarily need it on a multifamily property to be quite as big as 15 feet, as long as we can get street trees in there. And then that opens up other areas of the site to be used for parking or meeting other requirements that are included in our design standards. Now we're at the conclusion. Feels like finally we're here. It's a lot of words and a lot of talking. Pretty sure we all heard you. So why are we adopting objective design standards? Well, again, very clear direction and standards for applicants and staff. Not only does the state require that we have objective standards for very specific housing related projects, but it just helps staff and applicants move forward faster and with some level of expectation of design requirements. We don't like seeing applicants come in with a mostly designed project and then saying, you know, oh, we'd love a little bit more landscaping here, or we'd love this to be moved over here, or we'd love a different roof over here. We want to be really sort of upfront and clear about what the expectations are before they hire people to help with their designs. It also provides a ministerial permit path for many housing projects. So right now, projects have a design review committee process at minimum, and then a lot of times they are a conditional use permit. And so this would open the number of projects that are allowed to just go through with a building permit. And then we were very focused on providing a menu style of options that would allow some flexibility and allow Atascadero to maintain a lot of eclectic design and design choices for the applicant. So next steps, as Phil mentioned, this was a lot of information. And so rather than have you make a recommendation to council tonight after the first time of hearing it, we're kind of introducing all of these standards, requesting your feedback. We're happy to take feedback outside of the meeting as well from the public or from individual commissioners. And then we will come back. I think December 5th is our hearing date that we have preliminarily scheduled, and be asking for a recommendation to city council at that point in time. And we will bring you the full text of our code updates. We'll try and get that packet out to you a little bit in advance. We do have 75 pages of code updates to Title IX, in addition to our objective design standards portion of our amendment. So it's quite a lot to get through. Then we'll be going to city council in January, and then after second reading and 30 days from that, our ordinance will go into effect. So our objective design standards will be effective in early 2024. And with that, we are available for any questions.
Kelly, do you have any, can you supply us with maps? One of the things you asked about was the, oh, shoot. Yeah, the high versus medium density, where, you know, what is that? What does that look like? And how does the,
Yeah, so Sam actually has our zoning maps pulled up. And so I think he can share his screen and we can zoom around a little bit as needed.
So I am right now sharing a window of a remote desktop connection into my computer down there that has GIS running. So this might be a little weird. But let me see if I can direct us over to the right place here.
I gotta turn some layers off for you. so
Yeah, you
can
might want to
actually
turn
see
some
this.
layers up.
Bob Ross map. And it keeps changing my default microphone and I'm not sure why. Your Zoom is set backwards from mine. So in general, the brighter yellow areas are our single family zone, in addition to the green areas, which are definitely our rural zones outside of the area. So let's see if I can get this. So these sort of more orange colored areas are our medium density residential. And then the more brown areas are the higher density residential. So we have a couple areas of the city where those zoning designations are adjacent to single family. A lot of those are along Morrow Road. We have some at Highway 41, 101, kind of that triangular neighborhood area. And then a lot of what our existing general plan did was it put a commercial strip, a high density residential strip, a medium density residential strip, and then single family. So there's kind of some linear strips along El Camino Real in this location where there is the medium density residential adjacent to single family. We also on the north end of town have some commercial zones that are adjacent to larger lot single family, as well as on the south end of town on the east side of the freeway.
In terms of area, I'm going to say we have maybe fewer higher density parcels, but they're larger, and more medium density parcels, but smaller.
Yeah, it's interesting because we subdivided in 1913. A lot of our high density parcels are also small, which makes them difficult to develop. But we do have larger swaths, I would say, of our medium density residential areas. We're a very linear city. We're either linear along El Camino or we're linear along Morrow Road. And so that configuration has created a lot of transition areas where we have used medium density multifamily zoning adjacent to single family.
We're in question time.
Thank you, sir.
Go ahead.
I'm very supportive of the fractional density concept. But how does how would that affect within those two areas? I mean, if I can go to a higher density based on fractional use within a high density category, it's going to be a much different project than one that I didn't do that. Is that?
It might.
Yeah, there's a,
It might be different, but then again, keep in mind, staff's recommendation is only in that high density residential zone right now. We're asking you whether that should extend into the medium density residential zone.
and there's a
And-
couple
Oh, go ahead.
different factors to consider. So it might not change the look of a building very much. It might not change the height and scale of a building when you have, two 400 square foot units versus one 800 or 1,000 square foot unit. Those generally fit within the same box, sort of the same area. But where you will see differences, there will be a higher parking requirement and people will still need to meet parking. They'll still need to meet certain open space standards. And so it doesn't mean that every project is going to double in the number of units because there's still a balance with other standards that they need to meet that might limit how many units they can do on a property, regardless of how large the units are.
It just provides a little more flexibility and while incentivizing that smaller unit. But all the other property development standards, like Kelly mentioned. So it's not a significant shift. Most cities in our county have been doing this for many years. We're trying to catch up with that.
How, and you had talked about, and I had asked you about the change in the ministerial action from 12 to 40 units. Now, if I want to do a fractional project, then it seems like there's a potential for it not being ministerial because I'm going to have more than 40 units possibly because it's fractional. Is the density that from 12 to 40, it's going to be based on the baseline that you can get 20 units per acre. You have 3 acres of land, so you could have 60 units potentially there. Therefore, I'm not ministerial at that point. Is that?
So I think our draft standards don't necessarily clearly delineate that. It could go either way. So there could be a recommendation that that be the base density. And so it wouldn't necessarily be the total number of units. It would be the total number of density units. Or it could just be a straight number of units. So we'd be happy to hear any thoughts on that.
Well, that's my concern is trying to keep it more ministerial. So that's where, and again, I'm interested in fractional density, and I'm wondering if the number of 40 might be turn people away from wanting to do more fractional project. When you spoke about roofs, and you did talk about parapets, there was none of the graphics that were shown talked about, or nothing was about mechanical equipment. Because obviously in certain areas with parapets, they're there for a reason, so they can hide mechanicals. Is that something that's a concern or not?
So our code currently has requirements for screening of mechanical equipment, whether it be located on the ground or roof mounted. And so that will continue to be part of our standards.
With the raising of the height to 55 feet, is that going to trigger something from the fire department or emergency services to say, we don't have the equipment to serve 55 feet. We need new equipment.
So we've worked really closely with our fire department. It's not just a question of equipment. It's a question of personnel. When there are taller buildings, they need more personnel to clear floors and to get all the way up to the top floor and clear that floor. So they do have equipment to serve taller buildings. There's also options to add dry stand pipes into buildings, which are very effective for them to not have to necessarily use their ladder trucks. So they are comfortable with the height change within the downtown area and may be comfortable to expand that elsewhere as we explore that with our general plan.
You had mentioned at the very end, the words design review. Am I interpreting the fact that if I have a project that meets objective standards completely, then there's no design review?
There's no design review committee requirement, correct?
Little discouraged about the property development standards that you talked about, and you used the word quality. To me, you just jumped from objective to subjective with the word quality. Um, I'm a very visual person, and I'm wondering if there could not be more kind of visual things that could be used to describe these objective standards. So there would be less interpretation of, I read something, oh, I can do this, but that's not the picture that's in in staff's head, and so it doesn't fit. So it seems to me more graphics would be helpful for people
We-
to understand.
We definitely have our consultant team working on graphics. That is their next big lift for this project.
Okay, because I
Um,
had noticed in the report, there was just that one page of the, on page 42 of the graphic.
Yeah, that's the first one they've got done. So we definitely included that, but there are more to come in terms of quality of open space areas. Quality can definitely be subjective. If I'm, saying is that Adirondack chair better quality than another one? And those are not the type of things that we can regulate. But in terms of saying, currently in our code, we don't have many standards for open space. And so people do use their 8-foot deep detention basins and call them open space areas within their development. And what we're saying is that does not provide an opportunity for a quality amenity space for residents. And so there can be objective standards that say you cannot use a detention basin to meet your open space requirements unless it's less than a foot or 2 feet deep, whatever the standard might be, to ensure some level of usability.
So it's more of an adverb then. The implementation of the cottage cluster development, we had our example up the street here. And I think we all agree that it was a nice project, but there was issues that were created through the development of the project. Is there anything that staff has discussed with respect to objective standards that might resolve some of those conflicts that are created that were
I think
created there?
we have discussed if we can, under the scope of objective standards, adding some requirements related to phasing of amenity spaces versus units
Yeah,
being finalized or created.
yeah, I think that would be very helpful. Well, thank you. I really believe this is a great start. And I'm very appreciative. Oh, setbacks. You had noted kind of this transition zone between setbacks. We have single family at 25, we have multifamily at 15, potentially 12. It seems to me that would be an issue at a transitional zone right there. How do you, why are they able to be this close and I have to be back that far when those two areas meet linearly, let's just say. And so I see that as maybe a potential issue. And then I was kind of intrigued by the one graphic that you had on page 42, where we're kind of showing the upper story being offset 6 feet for a balcony. It seems to me you could have a colonnade instead, correct? And have the bottom floor inset versus the top floor.
Yeah, so I think that graphic on 42 kind of shows two different options. So you could have the bottom floors at the 10-foot setback and then step back the upper floor by 6 feet, or you could have the whole building set at 15 feet. So if your bottom floor was inset in a colonnade, then you would just have that 15-foot setback for the whole building.
This is why I think pictures would be good, again, people would see this is one of the ideas that you could do with that objective standards. It, goes both ways, and it could be photographs from anywhere. I mean, real life photographs even that might even be better versus illustrations. But I would encourage visual things. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for staff?
I had a quick one, and I don't know if this is just kind of out there, but as we move this into the medium density areas, will any applying like association fees for the open spaces go along with that? I worry that, you have these cottage clusters and shared barbecues and stuff like that that become, unusable and nobody wants to be responsible for them. How is that taken care of?
So the cottage cluster can be developed either as a for rent project, or somebody could come do a subdivision map on there. So the process for rent, it's owned all by the same person and they're responsible for maintenance. If somebody came and did a subdivision, they would be required to follow the same rules as anybody else with a subdivision. So if there's common space, they would be required to have a homeowners association and go through the Department of Real Estate to determine the costs and structure of those. So similar process for that. And the map still would remain a discretionary action at that point.
Keep in mind, if we allow cottage clusters today, the problem is in order for someone to do a cottage cluster, they actually have to come in and rezone the property to get a planned development, which is a very expensive proposition. And through that planned development process, the city is also going to put in place conditions, all kinds of other fees and lots of other things that are very similar to the design approach of what we're asking for here in a ministerial process. So in reality, this creates a more affordable project with the same kind of outcome. Either way, you're going to have association responsibilities for some of these amenities, but it's there whether we do the objective design standards or not, if you're going to create that kind of living space.
I just want to make sure it didn't affect that. Okay,
Yeah.
great. Thank you.
I have a couple questions and comments. So for the medium density, it's 10 units per acre.
As it is now,
Okay.
this could change with our general plan update because we're looking to kick densities a bit higher. Of course, you add fractional into that, it's different. You talk about ADUs, you talk about density bonuses with affordability. So a 10 is a real base, and it may go up with the general plan update.
But I think applying the fractional density to it, I think that is good because it provides more flexibility on some of the larger parcels, because they're still restricted by the parking requirements and all those other requirements. So I think that really the more places we can add the fractional density, the better, in my opinion.
The only con that staff thought of in this scenario is our edge, is our transition from that zone to a single family zone. As one of the things that council has actually reiterated many times is protect our transition zones and make sure that you have a logical transition between multifamily and single family and between commercial and single family. And right now, this kind of low density multifamily residential, or medium density as we call it, I don't want to call it medium because there is no low, but it's the lower of the two high densities, acts as that transition zone. And so you throw the flexible onto it, it's going to bump it up a little bit, but then you do that in the high as well. And maybe the single family zones we have around that will come up a little bit with our update anyway.
Right.
But
But
that's
I
the
mean,
only issue.
but
that
even
we
adding the fractional
have been
density, you're not necessarily adding additional square footage to a building. And so that's why I don't think it would make a difference in the transition, because, you'd have 2 600 square foot apartments as opposed to 1,000 square foot apartment. I mean, yeah, that's 200 square feet, but you're still restricted by the amount of parking that you need, and you still have to fit it into those transitional spaces. So I think that allowing for that at least flexibility of adding, 3 600 square foot apartments instead of 2 900 or whatever. I think the flexibility, I think fractional density is really cool. And I think allowing that flexibility in those transitional spaces, I mean, of course, there'll probably be a couple that look weird, but for the most part, I don't think it will change the square foot of the projects enough based on whatever density numbers we seem to be okay with in those transitional periods anyway to make a difference. That's just my opinion.
In general, what we have right now in the city is a relative shortage of studios and one bedrooms, because if you're a developer and you're told that you can do, say, 12 units on a lot with no instruction as to unit size, besides the limitations from parking and landscaping, et cetera, kinds of requirements, you're incentivized to make the largest units possible, with the largest number of bedrooms possible to maximize rent. And so this, like you said, gives a little bit more flexibility, allows for smaller units while still being able to pencil on the end of the developers.
Yeah, I mean, this is the first time I've heard about this, so I feel like I'm like, oh my God, you guys are geniuses, because I didn't know everybody was doing it. So as far as I'm concerned, y'all are amazing and this is brilliant. Okay, so on to sort of my questions. I noticed that keeping mature trees and protecting, I feel like I have to say this because Victoria's not here. And protecting native trees were optional. And I'm just kind of curious as to the thought process behind that, because I feel like that should be like, you should have to try to save them if you can. I don't feel like that should be an optional option.
So this is layered on top of our native tree ordinance. Our native
Okay.
tree ordinance doesn't go away. Having said that, big caveat on multifamily and commercial properties, sometimes it is not best to save the tree because we do want to maximize density and we do want to make projects that function long term. But our native tree ordinance and those findings still would be required as part of a project.
Okay, that makes me feel much better. I think that's everything.
Now, Phil, you mentioned something just kind of in passing that piqued my interest. You said something about the possible density of single family of RSF changing. Is that right?
We're looking at a lot of options with our update. It could mean reducing the minimum lot size. It could mean changing how we look at these zoning districts where there's wastewater services, where there's sewer services, where we have road capacity, where we have the infrastructure to serve them. We're trying to eke out, what we can actually make more productive in our community while minimizing any kind of neighborhood impacts and keeping those transitions. There's nothing we can do with majority of our city, all of the west side. What we're looking at is, for example, the areas on this map right here, that triangle shaped zone. What can happen here to entice more infill, to entice more redevelopment, to entice more things happening? The state's also doing that anyway through the SB 9 and ADU laws and all kinds of things that are happening in that area. So we're also being proactive in, is there an opportunity? So that's what I'm talking about here, looking at some additional transition zones, not only having a low and high density multifamily, but is there other single family zones that allow for smaller lots? Because right now our lot sizes are very large in some of these areas where they could be brought down a little bit. So I think overall, some of these densities might change where they can be accommodated and still preserve the character of the community and natural resources and have the infrastructure to serve them. Still don't know where that's going to go, but matter of fact, tomorrow, pretty much half of our day is going to be spent brainstorming those specific topics along with our general plan consultant and downloading all the information we've had from our last couple of workshops that we did and all of our outreach that we've done over the past few months. So.
Do you need any specific action from us tonight? Or?
Really, this is about a learning opportunity. So if you have specific things you want to provide direction on to us that you want brought back to you, or you really suggest, hey, you really should second think the way you've got this outlined, or you should really take a look at, X, Y, and Z. Then we're looking for that kind of direction. I also want to offer you just a little bit of homework because it's really helpful if you just go online and you type in objective design standards. A lot of other cities are doing this right now, and you can get ideas. Grover Beach has already adopted them. San Luis is working on them. Paso is working on these. A lot of other communities throughout the state of California are working on these. There's a lot of information out there, and it might stimulate your interest as to, where this project is going. It's going to result in a lot of code text changes. So bear with us as we bring those back to you. Now, I don't want to scare you by what Kelly said, 75 pages, when it's really, what it really is probably 5 pages of text changes. The thing is, we have to bring you the whole code, and the whole code's really long, all the areas that we touch. But no, you don't need to give us anything definitive if you feel comfortable with the general direction we're going. No matter what, we've got to adopt these standards. It's just how we do it, how easy it should it be for the public and developers to understand. And there are some parameters that we can decide upon, such as the project size threshold that can still go through at a ministerial level, whether we do fractional in both of those zoning districts, and there's a few other bits.
Can we, can we take what, excuse me. Can we take everything that we've learned today and like go over it again and then like email you before the next meeting?
Please, if you don't
Okay.
reach out to me or Kelly between now and the next meeting, you haven't done your job. Now, your job is a volunteer job, so I respect that. But please, I want to hear from you. Kelly wants to hear from you.
I
Okay,
do,
I
and
just
I
want
also want to
coffee.
hear if
Me-
you need more information to help you make decisions.
Okay.
And I know we probably have a couple members of the community that might want to speak on this item as well, so I want to make sure that we don't skip over them.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Come talk.
I guess,
Max never wants to talk. I don't know what you're talking about.
I guess one comment I would make is I'm very much encouraged by them. And I would try to build in as much flexibility you can within them to encourage that flexibility, then encourage people to want to use the objective standards versus trying to avoid them. And so however it can be done, maybe I don't know, just try to use this objective standards to encourage people to follow them. And that would be great.
And give them snacks.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Okay.
I just want to make a comment, I kind of was thinking the same thing that Dennis was thinking is objective standards are very, very nice for someone who's developing a plan. They know the rules, they know what they got to do, and they know where they can go, but just keep in mind that, they can be sometimes too narrow. And-
Yeah, it's very difficult because objective standards by their nature cannot be flexible. So we
Okay.
came up with the menu to try and add
Yeah.
some of that in. We also, hopefully by the time we come back to you, we'll have a developer/staff implementation checklist. And so it's a lot of words in our code and they have to be written a certain way. But our hope is to have sort of a handout and a checklist that helps people immediately move through the menu of options and be very easy to say, did I meet that? Did I not meet that? How many check boxes in this category did I need? How many have I checked? So we are hoping to streamline that process as much as possible, both for our applicants and for staff plan checking those elements. Because objective standards by their nature have a lot of detailed information and have to say a lot of very specific things in a specific way. So
And I do want to emphasize the savings on staff time. I come from policy land, Kelly comes from architecture land. And so when I'm reviewing multifamily developments and see something in our code that says, it must integrate well with X or Y, I always have to go to Kelly and be like, well, what does that mean? So this will be a pretty great staff time saver as well.
There you go.
Yeah.
Plus our time. All right, thank you.
Let's open it up for public comment. You could please state your name for the record and make sure the mic is turned on. Yep.
Hi, Bill Simon, resident Tascadero. Thanks for having in comments. My question is, if your objective is to have increased residential, then why are you having a 15-foot setback? If you just and your smaller size, 600 square feet, you take 15 by 20, 2 stories, that's 1 unit that's lost. So every 15 feet, that setback is really crucial for residential density. Is it more important to have the density or to have the tree in the sidewalk? I think they're a little bit conflicting for El Camino.
Thank you.
Max Zappis, citizen of Atascadero. I have 10 things to run through. I'll go as quick as I can. The first is that if not all of the objective design standards are met, then you fall into a CUP, which takes a lot more time, a lot more money, and it also makes you enter into a CFD when you do a CUP. So just don't make you meet all the standards, or make that somewhat more flexible. We already discussed the 40 units. Completely agree with Dennis. That seems like an arbitrary number. State law is meant to allow more to happen, not for city staff to arbitrarily decide projects of 40 units should not be subjective. The staff talked a lot about these tiers and the requirements, but they weren't very clear. There was not any detail about what's going to be required. It sounds like they're listing options, which is great, but we need to know what that actually is. Is it, multiple courtyards? Is it crazy awnings and different things that need a lot more clarity and explanation on what tiers are going to trigger what types of improvements, because that all translates to dollars. So if it's 2 units requiring 1 pergola, 4 units require 2, that's really important. We need to know exactly what people are getting into before they get into it. They also spoke kind of vaguely to additional standards. Well, what are they? Tell us exactly what these things actually are. And then previously, in previous discussions with city staff and at the council level, it's been very important to get rid of minimum lot sizes altogether. But now it sounds like they're only talking about getting rid of minimum lot sizes for this cottage cluster concept. So a perfect example is somebody owns a lot with 4 homes on it. They meet setback requirements for each of those homes. They should be able to separate that lot into 4 individual lots so that they could sell those to individual homeowners rather than retaining ownership as an investor. It should be, they should allow to sell those to the general people. They can make a profit on it because they're selling 4 instead of just 1 lot to another investor. Fractional density is really important in all zones, especially the commercial and downtown commercial zones. To limit it to high density multifamily is crazy. To limit it to multifamily and medium density is also crazy. The places in our city that we need redevelopment most are certainly along El Camino. There's decrepit buildings everywhere. Down 41, there's empty lots everywhere. Why don't we encourage density and fractional density in those locations that we need investment the most? And with fractional density, it's also important to reduce parking requirements, because you build somebody a 350 square foot home, the type of person that moves into that does not have 1.5 cars. To have 1.5 parking spaces required for a 350 square foot studio is ridiculous. You talk to anybody renting units of that size, about half of the population that rents units of that size don't have cars. They use public transportation. They're elderly, they're young. To Bill's point, setbacks for commercial zones being 15 feet, ridiculous. We just closed escrow on a property. It's the corner of Sinaloa on El Camino. The lot's not very deep. To take 15 feet out of our buildable area will make that project pretty much not feasible. So then we're going to come with a stupid CUP application, kick us into a CFD. It's just going to make the project not feasible. And there's lots up and down El Camino the whole way. Morrow Road is the exact same thing. Those are all commercial zones. Forcing 15 feet setbacks kills our current project, Curb Rail, that we came to you guys for. That pushes those buildings 15 feet off of Morrow Road. Why? Did the consultants come up with this, or did Phil just pull that out of his back pocket? What is that? Just also wanted to clarify what Kelly said. There are no large, medium, or high density lots in this town. There are none. You can go look around. There are none. I don't know where those are. If she can produce them, I'd love to buy them. The other thing is in regards to open space. They're trying to make it sound like it's flexible, but in reality, it's not. The state and the Regional Water Quality Control Board are going crazy. they're making these areas expand bigger and bigger. They need more and more retention basins and grasses and stuff to absorb water. Well, that can all be used as open space. It can be made nice. You can make it into great soccer fields, bocce ball courts, all sorts of things. But to say that we can't use it is not flexible. That's going to be the opposite. And so for example, we built 23 units on the south end of town. And our open space requirement made us lose a unit. They didn't let us use the retention basin, which was entirely usable. It only floods in 2 storms in the last like 5 years. So it's like, make it flexible. Last thing is, just want to thank staff for all their work on this. Thank you guys for looking at this. And just have one question, and that is, can staff explain this process in relation to the general plan process and the timing of both? Because as Tori alluded to, some of this stuff interplays with each other. And to make decisions now on this, I think personally is great. We want to see this stuff go and go quickly. But we need to also look at the rest of it. And I'm just concerned that we're doing this and then we're going to have to go back and change it, or, other things will change. So thank you for the time. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Anybody else? No? Okay, we'll go ahead and close public comment. Did you write down all of that?
I think I
stuff?
took notes.
Okay,
I think I took okay notes.
great, because a lot of those things were things that I thought up too. Yeah. Max, you can put those in an email and send them over. That'd be great.
One thing I would like to add is, one thing is we are pretty much out of multifamily land in Atascadero. It's probably one of the main components of our general plan update is to create more multifamily land, high density land. And we're going to be able to do that. It's looking pretty good that we can get some acreage in that in certain areas that aren't multifamily today. It's a huge deficit. So it's something to think about. And I think it's something that Max brought up as well. So
Yeah, because I was curious about that too, looking at the map, how much, most of those multifamily and medium density seem like they're pretty small lots.
they're small and there's nothing left. It's all been spoken for, or it's all slightly developed or partially developed, but there's nothing available. So it's a huge
Yeah,
deficit.
And how many of those are underdeveloped by
A lot.
current even current
Yeah,
standards?
a lot.
Most of them.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So I'll clarify, we'll get together with Max and we'll talk some details. But I just want to clarify the fractional density would be applied to the commercial mixed use zones. So we consider that our higher density residential in terms of density.
Yeah, because you had a maximum of 1,200 square feet, right? For the,
Yes, but also fractional density would apply in the mixed use zones.
Yeah.
So that is an incentive for the smaller units. So I just wanted to clarify that.
okay. Anything else from commission? Okay, then we'll close that item. Thank you very much. Phil, do you have a director's report?
I do, and it's dominated by one person who's been standing here very patient, or actually sitting here in the audience. And he wanted to have he wanted to say a statement. He wanted to approach a podium and tell you who he is and
This
a
is
little
the
bit
new
about him.
community development director.
So I'd like to introduce our newest planner, Associate Planner Eric Gomez. He just started with us last week. He'll be presenting to you at the Planning Commission in the near future. And wanted to introduce him to you and welcome to you. I'm not going to make him say a speech or anything. If he wants to say a word, he can in the microphone, but that's totally optional. I don't want to put him on the spot.
I will say some of you might recognize him because he was our intern a few years back. And so we're very excited to
Yeah.
have him back on our team.
His mustache is phenomenal.
Phenomenal.
Fantastic.
That is why we
It's
hired him.
fantastic.
The
honestly.
subtle curl is.
Yes,
ooh,
I noticed that
exquisite.
at the break and
know.
I was like, oh yeah, okay.
Thanks. I really appreciate that. It's been a lot of effort. It's my pandemic facial hair and I got attached to it is what I tell people. No, it's a pleasure to be here. Like Kelly said, I was here in 2018, 2019, interning. Had a great time. Left went to the county of Santa Barbara for a bit. I say that I did a well enough or good enough job there to get pulled into the private sector for some consulting. And now I'm back here in the public sector at a place I know and I feel good about with a great team. So I'm excited to be hopefully presenting before all of you here in the near future. So excited to get to know all of you and all of our local developers and be a part of some of these big things that are going on in the city. Thanks.
Well, congratulations and welcome. Look forward.
Yeah, welcome back.
Anything else, Phil, for us?
Well, you know what's coming next is back to objective design standards. So our December 5th hearing, did we cancel our second November hearing? So that will be the next time we see you, is that first hearing in December. And that's about it, unless you have any other questions for me.
No. Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank
We'll
you.
go ahead and adjourn our meeting. Until next time.